Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to be speaking about this upcoming full moon in the sign of Aquarius taking place on the 22nd of August 2021. Now before I begin, I would just like to say that this is a really rare full moon because it is the second one which takes place in the same sign. We had another full moon in Aquarius on the 24th of July 2021, and that happened around 1 degree of Aquarius. This full moon takes place at 29 degrees and 30 minutes. So the first one was the very beginning, and this one is the very end of the sign, and immediately the symbolism that pops into my mind is the alpha and the omega. Now another important fact is that it takes place at 29 degrees, which is called the anaretic degree. Any planet that is in this particular degree of each sign has its symbolism greatly amplified, and usually it is the shadowy quality of that planet which is the predominant influence. And if we take into consideration that this is a full moon, well, emotions, feelings are going to be at their very, very peak. And it's not just the moon that matters. Any full moon is the opposition of the sun and the moon. That means that the sun is at 29 degrees of Leo in its home sign, and Leo has everything to do with passion, everything to do with the heart. It is a very fiery emotional energy, if this makes sense. And the shadow quality of Leo and the sun in Leo, the ruling planet of that sign, well, first of all, it is the ego, it is me, the sense of identity, which matters the most. Even in physical reality, planets revolve around the sun. It is without a shadow of a doubt, even from a strictly scientific perspective, the king of the sky. It is what gives life to all of us, every living being. And also when the sun is in its home sign of Leo, the heart space, the sun always illuminates, it sheds light, it gives clarity. And with the sign of Leo, whatever is in our heart, the truth in our heart, may it be what we feel, who we think and feel that we are, our ego, our sense of identity, our creativity, our inner child. Opposing the moon in Aquarius, the moon is the soul, the moon is maybe the unconscious part of our identity, our unconscious distinctiveness, if this makes sense. And the sign of Aquarius has everything to do with distinctiveness, uniqueness, authenticity. And the shadow quality of that, well, that is where the authenticity is in such great excess, as in we might not have any choice from an unconscious perspective than to express it and to rebel. And basically an act of rebellion is that when we express our truth, our authenticity, our uniqueness, regardless of what is the normal, what is accepted, an act of rebellion is when we try to enforce our uniqueness to be able to exist in a free state. So these two combination, anaretic sun, ego, passionate, very, very, very passionate feelings, and the moon in Aquarius, emotional rebellion. Well, this already is a pretty electric combination. And, the shadow quality, I have to express this in a very artistic manner if I'm allowed. What this reminds me of, and of course, take this purely symbolically, those Godzilla movies? When the monster arises, the big titanic creature arises, and there is fire, there's volcanoes, there's lava, but at the same time as the monster destroys the city, there is a lot of electricity as well. Usually there is a lot of lightning or, electrical cables, explosions. So it is basically living chaos. So the worst possible expression of this energy is when that Godzilla, that monster, is the ego, and it has no limit, it has no bounds. It is basically born to be wild, Leo. And when there is a misunderstanding, symbolically again to be understood, or a not very, how should I even say, disciplined connection between, the sun, the ego, the sense of identity, and the moon, the soul, and our emotional configuration. And these two major inner forces simultaneously erupt. And we might not have a very good discipline at that time. Well, you can imagine the damage that it will do. And maybe the biggest danger is not damage towards other people, even though that might also be part of this deal. Mercury is in its exalted position in the sign of Virgo, a part of the sky where it rules. Mercury is always words. Aquarius is the internet, social connections, social media, phone communication, the information that we share. So if we share the information in a very volcanic way, heated way, passionate way, or maybe in a very unusual, little bit crazy way, the moon in Aquarius, well, it will definitely not go down well. But returning to Virgo, at this time of this full moon, we have Mercury conjunct Mars. Mars is the god of war. It determines action. It determines any kind of dynamism. And Virgo is a perfectionist sign. And if that turns inwards, well, we criticize ourselves. And perhaps in a really, really unfair way, in an excessive way, which can really lead to a major moment of self-defeat. And also, the moon in Aquarius. If we compare ourselves to society, Aquarius, other people, groups, community, etc., well, you can imagine that nothing good is gonna source from that. So I strongly believe that this full moon will require us to transmute this psychological, even spiritual electricity, this excess of power, to basically alchemize it into something either totally harmless, or if we can, depending on our own personal situations and however this full moon is going to manifest in our lives, to something useful, something even practical, Virgo. Our distinctiveness, our uniqueness, our self-expression can very well be shocking in the most delightful way, where it cheers people up, where it inspires people, or we give a very strong example, motivating others to do as we did or whatever we share. But I'll talk about the psychology of this full moon with advices and what to be careful of later on in the horoscope. Because regardless of who it is that we are, how much inner work or any kind of self-disciplinary work we have done in our lives, on one hand, this full moon, the moon is conjunct Jupiter. Jupiter expands everything that it touches. Jupiter also opposes the sun, so there might definitely be certain challenges there. And at the same time, perhaps the most important energy that takes place at the time of this full moon, well, the ruling planet of Aquarius is Uranus. Uranus at the time of the full moon is standing still in the sky, preparing to go retrograde the next day. Whenever a planet is stationary, its symbolism is greatly amplified. And Uranus, it is eruptive, it is volatile, it is the unexpected, it is pure chaos. Just take a look at what happened on the world stage. From the very, very beginning of the week, Monday, even going back to Saturday and Sunday, well, we had a lot of unexpected twists and turns of events, definitely surprises, and also quite a physical expression of Uranus, that very powerful and destructive earthquake. So Uranus is extremely active. And we kind of can expect the same kind of earthquake on an emotional level. And this is where individually all of us can cope our own way, but from a collective perspective, the moon symbolizes the feeling of people, the collective emotion. So there is gonna be a lot of unrest in the world around the time of this full moon. And since I already started speaking about the collective expression of this energy, well, here are a couple of possible ways that this really powerful and quite rare full moon can influence us from a collective perspective again. Now, Uranus has so much to do with electricity, even from a physical sense. So around this time, maybe our electrical devices, our phones, laptops, tablets, etc. might go a little bit haywire. We might experience power cutouts in certain parts of the world, internet cutouts. Aquarius has so much to do with the internet. The moon opposing sun, again, that can represent a very aggressive, assertive energy. So this might represent like cyber attacks or the internet or some big website like a government's website, bank's website, Uranus and Taurus being blocked or malfunctioning. Another expression of this energy also has to do with the internet. Well, this might be a moment when social media will be simply on fire. This also reminds me of like war-themed movies like the First or Second World War or any major war. And you can imagine a battle scene where bullets are flying everywhere, explosions, bombs, grenades, everything. And symbolically, if those bullets are people's opinions, well, that is exactly what's gonna happen on social media, the internet, even mainstream media. Dark Moon Lilith is in the sign of Gemini. Gemini is communication, words, what we share, what we speak. So I think that part is self-explanatory. The difference of opinions, the dichotomies, the contradictions, it's gonna be at all times peak. So expect a lot of controversy. And I do believe that the best thing is to stay away from that. Not only that, at the time of the full moon, everything that is being shared can be, true and not so true at the same time. Jupiter in the sign of Aquarius, well, it's very subjective truth. It might be true to you. It might be true with your way of thinking, with your own personal logic. But at the same time, it might be quite the opposite for another person. So what is true and what is not true is highly, highly susceptible to interpretation. So better not take it personally. And also, this is definitely the kind of energy where certain people might say everything is a hoax, everything is, staged, everything is a lie and deception. Well, that might be true, maybe, who knows? But, if that deception or whatever they think it is has a really powerful impact on everyone, especially emotions, the moon again, well, that it doesn't matter if it's a hoax or if it's true or not true. What matters is the impact that it leaves, so it's still disruptive. If you are easily triggered by the sharing of information and certain opinions, etc., I strongly, strongly suggest you stay out of any kind of opinion conflicts. Just shut down the internet and the phone and everything. Yet another expression of this energy, well, this is also very self-explanatory. Uranus is revolution, rebellion. fighting for the truth, fighting for equality, fighting even for justice. Jupiter in the sign of Aquarius, social justice, etc. So, protests and everything which has to do with an act of rebellion is definitely going to be part of the picture. People will take to the streets. There is going to be a lot of conflict. There is going to be a lot of strife. There is going to be a lot of criticism. Mars in the sign of Virgo again. And Virgo also has to do with discrimination. So maybe legal discrimination is definitely going to be a main theme. Uranus and the sign of Aquarius has so much to do with technology, especially very futuristic, innovative technology. So any kind of full moon has revelatory qualities to it. Something will come to light, basically. Maybe the world is going to be presented with a very unusual, never seen before technology, scientific discovery, a big, let's say, scientific epiphany, a big ambitious project of any kind. Or, if we take into consideration the planets in the sign of Virgo, that can be microbiology, that can be exactly what concerns the world the most at this time. The virus, maybe a potential treatment for a virus, not necessarily a vaccine. But regardless of what that is, it's definitely going to be controversial. It's definitely going to be contested by some people. Saturn in Aquarius, this is not acceptable. This is not moral. This is going too far. But at the same time, it's going to be highly supported by other people. Yes, this is the thing of the future. This is the next. This is the new. Let's try it. And last but not least, with a hyperactive Uranus, unusual weather phenomenon, the wind especially, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, the destructive force of fire, or maybe landslides, etc. This might be playing out somewhere in the world. Now let's examine this energy from a more karmic and spiritual perspective. Well, every kind of full moon represents a culmination of the lunar cycle. It is a completion, something coming to fruition. And when something comes to fruition, either it ends or it is the building material of something else. Like when you harvest a fruit, when your garden, when your plants, when your trees bear fruits, you are ready for a harvest. And what you do with your harvest, what you do with your fruits, well, of course, that is for you to decide. And also because this is an erratic degree, well, this has a sense of urgency to it. Either something urgently needs to end, or something urgently needs to complete itself. And with every kind of full moon, the main luminaries oppose each other, so it always has some kind of revelatory qualities. And Aquarius has so much to do with society, your social circle, your friends, your acquaintances, perhaps your local community. In other words, those people who are part of your life, regardless in which way. Maybe an information, a surprising one of course, is shared with you, or it is you who shares something, and your acquaintances, friends have reaction to that. You find out about a secret, or you have a very, very big personal epiphany. This can also be a big possibility at this time, because at the time of this full moon, Uranus holds a supremely harmonious conversation, a trine with Mercury. These two planets are planets of the mind, so it is really a good energy for brainstorming. Mercury is extremely powerful because it is in its home sign, and also exaltation. So this is when your mind becomes really, really practical, very analytical, very methodological, if this makes sense. And it is also conjunct Mars. So the motivation, the ambition, and even the inner energy, if this makes sense, is definitely going to be there. And this full moon in Aquarius, as I said earlier, your friends, your social circle, maybe it is a friend of yours, someone who you know, who comes up with an epiphany, with a bright idea, with an ingenious thought, with a beautiful plan, and they share it with you, and you become part of it, partners, or you help them, or they help you. Maybe they suggest something, and that suggestion is gonna feel like a eureka moment. It can certainly be a powerful moment of breakthrough, or a big sudden change which is started off by an idea or a thought or a communication. At the time of this full moon, Venus is in the sign of Libra, and she holds a supremely harmonious conversation with Ceres from the sign of Gemini. This also speaks about inspiration, a good idea, a good advice, a beautiful thought, or an inspirational, motivational text, or something that you read, maybe even a synchronicity, which can lead to a really prosperous, positive, loving alliance of any kind. Venus is in the sign of Libra, and that is the house of partnerships, contracts, alliances of any kind, even love. And taking a look at the general astrological picture at the time of this full moon, well, it's almost written on it that some people, some very lucky people, again, Jupiter is planet of good fortune, let's not forget, are definitely going to be shocked, surprised, delighted by a romantic declaration, by a gesture of gratitude, appreciation, honors, coming perhaps from a person, a group of people, a community, maybe organization, their place of work, etc., in an unexpected way, and that definitely leads to something truly positive. And an erratic sun in Leo, well, that can truly add to someone's self-worth, or it can be a moment of great joy, a great delight. It can simply feel like honey for the soul. Or another way this might play out, maybe you have a really good friend, someone who truly knows you, and they do something to push you out of your comfort zone, maybe somehow drag you out of your shy corner, let's say. The sun in Leo, you share something, you express yourself, feelings, etc., and something truly wonderful happens. Or another way this energy can play out personally, the sign of Virgo is service and self-sacrifice. Someone asks you for a favor, and of course you say yes, you do it, you help them, and it leads to a much greater blessing that you could possibly imagine. And with Uranus this active, Uranus is always the mysterious stranger. So, maybe a total stranger asks for help, a total stranger asks for a favor, or maybe you decide to help a total stranger who is in some kind of trouble or need, because Uranus is also the planet of humanitarianism, so it is showing our very, very brightest and best human qualities, which is solidarity, and it turns into a major blessing. Leo is the sign of kings and celebrities. Maybe that total stranger who you decided to help out or say yes to whatever favor they ask of you, maybe that is some kind of celebrity, highly influential person, so you can imagine that the blessings will pour from that very simple random gesture. And with Uranus trine Mercury being at the right place at the right time, a really powerful synchronicity which leads to something practical, as in a blessing from a material sense. This energy is quite favorable for those individuals who need something urgently to be terminated in their lives, something to end, something to cease. For example, a contract, a relationship, a situation perhaps of moral obligation, an excess of something in their lives, and perhaps the situation Again, the sign of Virgo, rationally, logically, Mercury conjunct Mars, so a very rational Mercury. Your situation cannot be solved right now. There is no exit from that situation in the very close future. And Uranus, something happens as a shock, as a surprise, and whatever was binding you, whatever was taking away your freedom, whatever maybe was upsetting you, Sun in the sign of Leo, all of a sudden, there and then, or maybe overnight, miraculously ends, and you have your freedom. And that can very well be a really powerful emotional shock. Of the best kind, of course. Now finally, from a psychological perspective, well, this is where things become a little bit complicated. Because this energy, as I said, it is so electric, it is so volatile, so combust, that chances are, if we're personally sucked into anything, our own drama, or, whatever that may be, well, it's not gonna be easy to bear. Jupiter opposing the Sun, excess, so something is definitely gonna be very, very excessive. And ultimately, even if it's excessive joy, even if it's excessive admiration, it is never ever good. It is always a little bit harmful, because when the balance is tipped into an extreme, well, it never ever leads to anywhere good. Now, naturally, there are certain people out there in the world who are configured internally in such a way that they thrive in chaos, in excesses, and of course for them this might be something that they've been waiting for a long time, but those people are kind of rare. Excess and, extreme chaos for the most of us is not gonna lead to anywhere positive, even if it's, as I said, joy, happiness, etc. Now, if we add to this that Uranus, especially in the sign of Taurus, represents the Schumann resonance, the huge spikes, well, this has anxiety written all over it. And this kind of Uranian anxiety is not really something we can actually control, because it's simply the electricity in our nervous systems. When it spikes, it spikes. Also, the Sun in Leo, perhaps there is a very strong solar activity to top this up. A solar flare or something takes place in the electromagnetic field of the Sun or even our planet. That is what it is scientifically, but it also has a profound psychological effect on us. It flares up our neurons, and if not anything else, it can lead to a really restless night, sleep disturbances, especially for those people who usually struggle sleeping at a full moon. So the reason I'm telling you this is just be aware that there is going to be perhaps a physical stress in your body, in your nervous system, perhaps sometimes without any logical, rational explanation. We just react to the electromagnetic fields as every other living organism on the planet. So at this time, avoid conflict, avoid opinions, avoid being like a sponge to what other people share. It is much more wiser to just detach and do something where your mind and even your feelings are distracted. Like, here are certain suggestions and tips of what can actually work very well with this full moon, in a sense that we actually counteract its expression, its symbolism, its energies. So the sign of Virgo has Mars and Mercury in it, of course, and that can be a big blessing. For example, activities where you clean up your closet, you clean your house, you organize an area of your house where that there is chaos and it needs sorting out, to get rid of old clothes, for example, or to select your clothes and make a charity box. You decide to donate a part of the clothes or objects or even food, whatever it is that you have in your life that you no longer need or is in excess. Donating under a retrograde Jupiter, well, it's always a source of good karma. And when you sort out, objects, things that you have, clothes, or wherever you would like to make order in your physical environment, well, not only does that distract the mind, but it also distracts the soul, because you will remember this event, that event, you will probably have nostalgic moments, you will probably smile, because certain object will remind you of funny moments in life. Ceres in the sign of Gemini, humor feeds the soul, the mind, the body. Humor is truly a divine gift that makes our everyday reality brighter and way more optimistic. It has even, laughter has even physical effects. It heals, regenerates the body, and it is one of the best possible cures or coping mechanisms against stress. Venus in the sign of Libra, Venus is beauty. She is very, very powerful and very bright in the sign of Libra. So basically, regardless of your gender, perform certain cosmetic procedures. Of course, that which is in your power on yourself, like do your nails, have a self-care moment, use creams, lotions, whatever it is that delights you. Try out, for example, new products. Mercury and Mars in the sign of Virgo, everything natural, because Virgo is the living earth. Like aromatic oils or products based on certain plants, etc., natural supplements. It's a really, really good moment to experiment with all of that. Try out different makeup styles, especially if you're a lady. Experiment with different styles, dye your hair. For male listeners, like this very same thing can be applied from a masculine sense, like trim your beard or decide to grow a beard. Do physical exercise. Basically, just keep your mind, your body, and even your soul occupied. Because not only are all of these really good ways to counteract this stressful expression of this full moon, but maybe you'll enjoy some of them and decide to keep as a daily routine. Virgo is all about our daily routines, and its most favorable expression is that which actually contributes to our health, our beauty, the well-functioning of our physical bodies, which means that our minds, Mercury, are going to be that much more healthier as well. It will reflect our physical health. Now, needless to say, anything that has to do with meditation, spiritual practices which combine the body and the soul, like Qigong, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correct, or yoga or anything like that. Of course, walking in nature, being around plants, being around animals, all of this is highly, highly recommended because they just feed the soul basically. They help us profoundly. And especially if one of your major flaws is like excessive self-criticism, where perhaps you can find mistakes in everything that you do, or inner flaws which not even other people would hold against you. Well, for you guys, playing with an animal, especially if you have a pet, a dog or cat or whatever, can be almost therapeutic, because just think about it. Our pets are not perfect, and whatever makes them imperfect, like every single pet, like, the dogs of most people have some kind of weirdness, a weird habit, or they might behave a certain way which is totally unusual for that breed or that species. And just think about it. Are we upset? No, we are actually delighted. Their flaws or their weirdness, their imperfections make us love them that much more. It's not just any dog, it is your dog with this specific, let's say, imperfection to that, which makes them so cute, so lovable, so unique, so, everything that makes them stand out. So if you love your pet even more for their imperfections, it's that much easier to do it for yourself. Also, artists of all kinds, regardless what your skill and art is, well, you can always turn this excessive fire energy into your creation. Like, for example, if someone or something made you really, really angry, this is very possible under this full moon, well, just write a rebellious song. If you're a painter or any kind of visual artist, like, paint or create a very grotesque Picasso-like painting or any kind of creation. If you're good at writing, Mercury in the sign of Virgo, write it out. Journal it. Use that anger and turn it into some kind of creation. Or if you know that you're a big child, the sun in Leo, the inner child, well, this might be a perfect day to just watch comedy, anything which has to do with humor, everything which makes you laugh. If you have big children, friends, well, meet these friends that day and just do silly things, laugh. If you are a parent and have young children, well, this might be the best moment to just play with them. And don't be a parent, just be a playmate to your child, just be another child. I would even go as far as actually buy yourself some kind of toy which really inspired you in your childhood, and after this full moon ends, just gift it to your child. Very simple. Or let's say if you're in a committed relationship, you can use this energetic sun in so many different ways. Like, for example, try things which you have never even imagined of trying. The more weird, the more unlike yourself and your usual habits, the better. For example, body paint each other, have a good laugh, or just sit down and reorganize your old picture albums with your childhood, high school years, etc. Your partner will definitely ask you to tell them the story about this and that can be such a really special moment, and then your partner does the same, and then you ask questions. Or another unusual idea that comes into my mind, in some countries, they have these places where you can go to, and of course pay, and it's like an activity, and you're allowed to break dishes or expensive items like pottery and stuff like that. And that is such a good way to channel your inner demon, that excessive sun in Leo, your aggression. And if you're with your partner, imagine how breaking those dishes or, china items are gonna lead to a good laugh. Or you can try any unusual kind of fun activity, where they have those levitating rooms, or virtual reality experiences of all kinds. Now, what is not really advised is extreme sports, because when Uranus is standing still in the sky, it's not a good idea to take that kind of risk. Even though it's fun, it will do the job psychologically, but perhaps the physical factor is the problem there. But anything which is unusual, fun, and there is not a big physical risk to that, now that is in the book. Now also, this kind of energy where we have an energetic sun is going to be extremely difficult for those people who have some kind of ego imbalances. Now what does that mean? Those who are very self-centered, and they know about themselves that they are like that, so this isn't like any kind of mystery. This isn't really like a big soul-searching eureka moment. Everyone knows who they are deep inside their hearts. And with stationary Uranus, well, chances are that it's exactly that part of themselves which is going to be on the edge. For example, someone very self-centered will either crave for attention in excess, or they will feel like everyone around them is their enemy at that special moment. But of course there is the opposite, where some people suffer from really, really low self-worth. And at the time of this full moon, well, of course they might feel that they're nothing, like they are truly, maybe from even a literal sense, worthless, and they might not even have the power to get out of bed. And for these people, the best possible coping skill is simply to decide, well, today I'm not gonna be myself. I'm not gonna play the role of my identity. I am simply going to just be, and that's it. Ultimately, life, everything in it, and especially the ego, our sense of self, our identity, is just a dream. We have to dream it and feed that dream for it to exist. And when we know that we might be triggered severely, let's just take all that energy that we invest into keeping that dream in existence and just do something else with it. For a day, it won't kill us. And especially for those who have very low self-esteem, who feel like they aren't really much, or they're not successful, or there is a reason for that, and you probably know what the reason is. Well, just think about it this way. The most successful people are actually consumed by whatever makes them successful. Success has a very, very high price from an energetic perspective. Even if success comes to them easily, even if they don't have to put a lot of effort in it physically, socially, morally, whatever, yet we are also ethereal. And it basically eats up our energy, it eats up our souls. We become that which makes us successful. So it sucks out energy from the core of our beings and turns it into that, alchemizes it. So at the end of the day, they become less soul and more whatever makes them successful. And just think about your situation. Perhaps for you karmically, the divine source is actually protecting you from eating yourself up. Maybe the universe says, well, you know what? I value much more that energy, that specific divine identity, who you are at the very core of your being, and I'm not allowing you to alchemize it into something that won't really serve you. Because human life is just an illusion. We don't know that, but the divine does. And of course the soul does know, even if it's in a very unconscious way. And this might be one of the manifestations of your inner Saturn, where it says, I'm not allowing myself to be transmuted, transformed into something that really, at the very core of my divine being, means nothing for me. And usually people who are not very successful, no matter what they do, it's really not a curse, it is not bad karma, it is not what they think it is simply an instinct of self-conservation, where the soul does not allow itself to be touched and transformed into something it doesn't agree with. So, sometimes it's actually the biggest blessing. It is a living proof of a very, very strong spirit and a connection to the divine. It is sometimes a sign of divine protection, and definitely not the opposite. It feels like the opposite because we are programmed, we are conditioned. We have been to school and educated to believe that success has to look like this and that. When in truth, from a spiritual perspective, success looks in the total opposite. If you look back at the teaching and words and the life of the great ascended masters, there were moments when they performed miracles. And naturally, miracles are impressive. So people used to thank them and try and worship them. and each and every ascended master, regardless of the culture and religion they belong to, they said the same thing. It's not me, don't thank me, I'm nothing. Thank the divine, and ultimately thank your connection to the divine for what has taken place here and then. They always dissociated the ego, their identity, from the miracle. And that is not really fake humbleness, perhaps not even humbleness. It is truth. It is basically spiritual science, because they know that they are just a tiny little part of the divine mechanism, and them allowing other people, beings, whatever, to actually worship them would be self-defeating, would be actually harmful for what they embody. To be worshipped, to be glorified, to be put on a pedestal is very, very harmful. Of course, in our human world, in our human society, we do need that harm, because ultimately everything in life is an alchemy, isn't it? So we do need to transmute a little bit of our souls, of our divine essence, into something material, physical. So we do need that gratitude or that honor or whatever. But how much every soul needs of that, let's say, spiritual poison called glorification or gratitude to the ego. You know, every soul knows their own limits, knows how much is healthy for them. Like, for example, you may have a beautiful flower, a really beautiful plant, but you know that each and every plant needs different quantities of water, so you're not gonna kill your plant by drowning it in water, regardless of how much you love it and would like to feed it, nurture it, etc. And you know, like certain plant species, like the cactus, doesn't need a lot of water. It doesn't even like it. For it to stay healthy and to be what it is, you know, again, the teaching of the Christ, I am what I am, perhaps that is the biggest truth of the universe. It needs only very little amount of water, because that is the way it specifically adapted or chose to survive in the earthly plane. The same, certain souls don't need a lot of love and gratitude and a human and very down-to-earth expression of this kind of psychological and emotional food to survive. Gratitude, love, appreciation, other people being kind to them, valuing them, etc. So this is why to know ourselves profoundly, even from a spiritual perspective, is so very important, because what we think as rational human beings who were conditioned by our education is one thing, what we think that we need, but what we actually need on a soul level might be totally different. And for a lot of people, this is the major source of depression, especially when it doesn't really make sense. It is just always there. And you know, depression is when the soul feels a big disharmony somewhere within the being, and it tries to tell you that it's not thriving, it's not okay. It doesn't like that specific balance which is in your being. And if we go to the previous example, well, if you're a cactus and you're not treating yourself as a cactus, you might not really be self-aware from a spiritual perspective. Maybe your soul is trying to tell you, I'm a cactus and I need this specific balance in order for me to thrive and bloom and flower and be my very, very best self. But if your parents or school or, you know, it doesn't matter the reason, taught you all your lifetime that you're a lily or a lotus flower, and you wanna enact that programming, well, you can imagine that there will be a big contradiction within you. And when this happens, there will always be a dark night of the soul where you will lose the excess of whatever hurts the true self, the cactus, and it will force you to somehow become aware that I don't even want to be a lily or lotus flower. I am actually created to thrive in a desert. And usually this moment of realization, when you look your soul in the mirror and see what you are, actually heals the dark night of the soul and makes all the painful lessons that have led you there turn into soul level nutrients, and you start to thrive, you start to grow, you start to prosper and be yourself. It is in that moment when you truly find freedom, and all of this goes so well with the symbolism of Aquarius, Uranus, the moon in Aquarius, and at the same time also Virgo, the right nutrients for who you truly are. So this concludes today's horoscope. Thank you so much for listening. I do hope that this was helpful. And I wish everyone a really blessed, optimistic, and life-changing full moon. Until next time, bye for now.